Myself, like many people over the past weekend, played the Modern Warfare Open Beta. I wanted to talk about my impressions and concerns moving forward towards the final release of the game. As someone who hasn't really been interested in Call of Duty since the original Black Ops, Modern Warfare and the hype around it has gotten me really interested in buying a Call of Duty game for the first time in almost a decade. However, with the information that has come to my attention during this past week, and my experience during the beta, I've become conflicted. Visually, this is probably the most impressive game I've seen to date. It looks genuinely beautiful. The animations, along with excellent scope rendering, show a lot of care for realism and detail that I think is quite rare in the FPS genre. The maps of the game very much look real and lived in, however, this comes at a price. There is a great deal of visual clutter, and along with hit or miss lighting, enemies are extremely difficult to see at times. Map balance also felt a bit hit or miss during the beta, as Hackney Yard specifically had a significant spawn camping issue on the train side. The movement is extremely satisfying, and the guns feel meaty and real as you're using them, which is refreshing compared to the one-dimensional laser beams of previous Call of Duty games. This is a face of COD we really haven't seen before. Infinity Ward has clearly taken inspiration from Battlefield and the success of Rainbow Six Siege, slowing things down while still maintaining the feel of a more traditional Call of Duty title. However, this comes at a price. The tactical, more skill-based influence of Rainbow Six is lost in the incredibly fast time to kill, or TTK, resulting in more fights being decided by one player seeing the other first or on reaction time alone, and not necessarily actual gun skill. This is further inflated by the sheer power of hipfire, and how spraying at the enemy is rewarded over carefully placing shots, or aiming at the head, for example. This also means that the gun's rate of fire is valued over other stats, which makes the vast library of guns rather redundant. The extremely fast TTK, along with the strength of claymores, discourages the player from playing aggressively. Being aimed down sights and ready for your opponent to come to you will often win you the gunfight over actually trying to push into the enemy while not knowing where they're positioned. A prime example of this can be seen in the map Azir Cave. When you try to push from the village into the cave, there are so many angles and places your opponent is able to hide that there's no real way for you to, as the attacker, properly account for where they'll be positioned. You not only have to scan for targets horizontally, but vertically as well, which can result in unsatisfying engagements where you lose just because you looked up when your opponent was down, and vice versa. This issue is magnified by the darkness and clutter throughout the cave, and because the game's netcode favors the shooter. This is why you get situations where you, the player, are shot behind cover, or feel as though you've just gotten one shot, however in the kill cam it shows something completely different from what you just experienced. The network performance overall is markedly worse than Black Ops 4, for example, which is a concern the community should have going forward. I hope this netcode is something that gets addressed before the release later this October. For a more in-depth analysis of the game's netcode, Battle Nonsense made a video on it that will be in the description below. Another concern that I have is the game's implementation of kill streaks. Team Deathmatch with kill streaks and all the chaos that goes with it is unquestionably the iconic Call of Duty experience, and I think that should be left alone. However, then you have a game mode like Cyber Attack. Starting as Capture the Flag, teams fight over a bomb. In order to win, one team has to either retrieve the bomb and plant it on an objective, or eliminate all enemies. There are no respawns. Sounds like a fun, slower, more tactical game mode that focuses on teamwork and skill, right? Well, you would be right, until you get slammed by a cruise missile because yes, this game mode has kill streaks. It frankly doesn't matter how well you prepare or work together with your team if you just get yeeted by a C-130. On that same note, it also means that the team that starts the match winning and doing well will continue to do so because these kill streaks give them a significant advantage, hindering the losing team's ability to mount a comeback. Kill streaks take Cyber Attack from a game mode that could be extremely competitive and engaging to just TDM with more steps. One of the biggest marketing points for the game, aside from the more tactical gameplay, has been Ground War. Ground War is clearly targeted at the dissatisfied Battlefield player base. Boarding 64 players, a huge map, and objectives to capture reminiscent of Conquest. So the big question is, will Ground War be their silver bullet? The foundation is definitely there for a great experience that has the potential to trump Battlefield. However, in its current iteration, I do not believe this will be the Battlefield killer we were all expecting. You have this huge map for players to explore and use to their advantage, but almost all the fighting happens in and around the central buildings. The objectives in the center are so close together that you end up with 10 to 15 players packed in a room, trying to push another room with just as many enemies. This player congestion problem is exacerbated because leaving the safety of those buildings means you're completely exposed to armored vehicles that one-shot you with splash damage, and the spam of 64 players using kill streaks on each other. Bullet penetration also felt inconsistent. I like the feature as a whole, but the surfaces you're actually able to shoot through seem quite strange. Wood or sheet metal I can understand, but being able to spray an enemy through a brick wall seems a little much to me. Not to mention the fact that the VTOL can shoot through the metal roof of some of the buildings, so even the insides are not always safe. Speaking of kill streaks, do you like flanking? Well, good luck, because UAVs will be active constantly, so the ghost perk is pretty much required. I understand that they want the game mode to be similar to others regarding kill streaks, but I think Ground War would benefit greatly from at least an adjustment of the kill streaks available for the sake of gameplay. Another major issue that I encountered was how the game mode handles spawning. If you want to spawn B, C, or D, expect to be plopped either in the open or among enemies, because that was the majority of my experience during the beta. I don't think this would be as big of an issue if the game didn't spawn you before you had the ability to control your character. The spawning system for the game in general seems a little funny, as I on Hackney Yard and in Ground War would just get spawned in, next to, or behind enemies, which is something that definitely needs to be addressed before launch. On the subject of technical issues, the game overall felt quite polished. I only really encountered 4 major bugs during my time playing the beta. First being an aim-down sight bug that limits your refresh rate to 60 Hz, and a lobby bug that requires players playing in a squad to frequently remake their squads in between games. Both of which I know for a fact Infinity Ward is aware of and should be fixed before release. The third being the spawning shenanigans I spoke about previously, and an issue where the ping displayed on the scoreboards is not accurate and fluctuates frequently. I'm not saying they aren't working on the latter 2 bugs, but unlike the former 2, I have no confirmation at this time. Something myself and a lot of other people have been excited for is the new crossplay feature allowing Xbox, PC, and PS4 players to enjoy the game together. This, among other things, solves the issue of COD on PC dying off rather quickly, as there will always be people to play with. However, all of this had me wondering, what made Sony, the company who avoids crossplay like the plague, suddenly do a 180? On September 25th, I was given my answer. Spec Ops Survival Mode will be exclusive to PS4 until October 1st, 2020. I want you to keep in mind that COD games are on a yearly release cycle, so this basically means that PS4 players will get exclusive access to this content until the next COD is already out. Not only is this exclusivity deal terribly anti-consumer, but exclusivity to this extent is absurd. YouTuber The Gaming Revolution puts it better than I ever could. Survival makes up 50% of Spec Ops, with the missions being the other 50%. There's 3 game modes at launch: Campaign, Multiplayer, and Co-op. So 1/6, or 16% of the game, is PS4 exclusive content. Why am I being charged full price for 84% of a game? Which leads me into my next and biggest hang-up as to whether or not I will buy this game. Activision. On top of this ridiculous exclusivity deal with Sony for PS4, we have a publisher that has so far been evasive, at the least regarding post-launch monetization. With there being reportedly no season pass for Modern Warfare, how are they going to make their money? You guessed it, everyone's favorite surprise mechanic, loot boxes. When I say loot boxes, I mean lots of loot boxes. Reportedly 300 plus emotes, 500 plus titles, and 200 plus sprays leaked thus far. And if Black Ops 4 is any representation of what is to come, weapons will also be in those loot boxes. So we got ourselves some pay-to-win elements to end things on a high note. I recognize that the publisher needs to be able to make money, and I don't have a problem with loot boxes in general as long as they don't affect balance and are purely cosmetic. But for Christ's sake, keep the guns out of it. Perhaps I went into the beta with my expectations too high, and now my view is biased, but I know I'm not alone in the points I've brought up so far. I wanted to love this game, I really did. I was 100% ready to pre-order before the beta weekend. My experience playing the beta made me want to think about it going forward, as there were things I really liked about the game, but there were also things I didn't really like. That's normal though, nothing will ever be perfect or just the way you like it. I even decided to purchase the game when I found myself missing it on Monday and Tuesday. Although now that I've seen this news about the monetization and the exclusivity malarkey, I cannot recommend Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I genuinely feel bad for the developers at Infinity Ward because they've clearly made something great that they are passionate about. I really want to purchase this game, but personally I refuse to support Activision's bullshit, and I think you shouldn't support it either. Money is clearly all they care about, so maybe canceling pre-orders and refusing to purchase is how we get them to listen. As always, if you disagree with anything that I've said, have any feedback, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Ground War clearly targeted. The fuck is that sound?